Welcome to the You Don't Know What You Don't Know podcast by Innovative Business Advisors. Successful business owners who have started, grown, and led businesses share their journey and direction for the benefit of those traveling the same path.
Today, we're talking with Les Landis, business owner and founder of Landis & Associates. Landis & Associates has as its mission aligning employee engagement and marketing communications. Its expertise is helping business owners build high-performance organizations by providing expertise and services in the areas of employee engagement, marketing communications, leadership development, and talent acquisition. Les is an expert in these fields and utilizes a core group of other seasoned professionals to deliver the services his clients desire. Les is also a published author of the book, Getting to the Heart of Employee Engagement. He's a thought leader and author of multiple articles and white papers, and is a man that's really driven to serve his community. Les has got a giver's heart. His authority on these topics is widely regarded, and you can find Les featured in many media magazines and articles, and you can see several of his keynote addresses on his YouTube channel. I am honored to welcome Les Landis. So Les, tell me a little bit about the moment you decided to get into business.
Yeah. The business, right?
The business.
So I don't know. I think I probably always thought about working or doing my own thing, having my own business. But of course, that's not where I started. Started working with a guy that brought me to St. Louis. Brilliant man I knew from university days, named David Burlow. And but for a whole host of reasons, we decided that wasn't really the right thing for us to be doing right now. So I went out to work to Merritt's for a while, for a few years.
Okay.
I was an audiovisual writer, producer, and a creative supervisor. And then I wound up getting a position that was just terrific. It was the head of corporate communications for Pet Incorporated, which was one of the world's largest international food companies.
Yes.
The old evaporated milk, cow in the can, and of course, he had a lot of other foods, Old El Paso, Mexican foods, Progresso, all kinds of really big name food brands. Did a lot of work around what was known at the time as total quality management, TQM, that we all know and love, or at least we did until I realized that it was really getting us just caught in a bunch of programs rather than really making substantive difference in the way that we did things in organizations. And I really wanted to be able to get out and have that kind of I'll call it the right thinking about how we really get people engaged in an organization. And so I just decided after about 10 years at Pet that I was going to strike out on my own. And I don't know if I might have stayed there longer, but there was a lot of stuff going on in the organization at the time, and they were going through some big changes, and they wanted to make a big cut in the various people in various parts of the company. And I said, well, let's take a look at our operation here, because I had a number of departments that were reporting to me. And after I got done talking with I guess he was the chief administration officer, was my boss, I said, as you can see, we probably actually need more people rather than getting rid of folks. He said, I totally agree. He says, but how's it going to look if everybody else has to cut people and you don't do that and you add people? And I said, you know what? Why don't you just put my name at the top of that list and we'll get rid of the others as well, and then I'm just going to take off. And he says, no. He says, don't do that. He says, we need you around here. So think about it overnight and then come back in the morning. But I decided that was time. It was the opportunity. And that was more than 25 years ago. So that's how I got out here.
Wow. Well, interesting. And was Merritt's, when you were at Merritt's, was it a family-run company at that time?
Yes, indeed. In fact, I'm trying to remember if the new generation had come in. When I started there was Bill and Jim Merritt's.
Mm-hmm.
It was their father who started the company way back in the 30s, I think it was. And they were there, and it was fun company to work for.
Was it different going from a family-run organization over to a big conglomerate like Pet?
Yeah, I mean, it was different in a lot of ways, but Merit's was no small company. They had
Right.
thousands of employees, so
Yeah.
it was not like a mom and pop shop. And when I went down to Pet, of course, this was the corporate headquarters. There were operations all around the world, but at corporate headquarters there was, I don't know, maybe 300 or 400 people.
Mm-hmm.
So there were actually a lot more people out at Merit's than there were at Pet. But obviously the position and the work was radically different. Being responsible for both internal and external communication for the corporation. And like I said, I had consumer affairs reporting to me, creative services, public relations, employee communications. So it was a pretty big team of folks that I had. And it was a great experience.
Yeah, I often think about, I also had the opportunity to work in my corporate background with a public company. And I think about public relations back before the age of the internet was completely different than it is today.
Oh man,
Right?
let me tell you. Yeah, it sure as heck was. I mean, I think the same principles applied, and it's
Yeah.
you got to really build relationships with the right people. It was just a whole lot easier to pinpoint the relationships and develop them than it is in the day of social media, because there's just so many directions and so many places that you can go. And it was, much more focused and contained and manageable back when I was in charge of all that.
I bet it was. It's got to be daunting these days. But
Yeah.
so tell me about Landis and Associates. So you leave and you formed Landis and Associates at that point?
Actually, I formed a company called Landis Communications
Okay.
because that was really the core of my work. That was really my seminal expertise, and then that's really pretty much everything that I did in the whole quality arena and the engagement arena at its roots in effective organizational communication. And so actually spent a lot of time talking about the role of communication in total quality management. Even had some articles written, interviews done like this one, and made presentations in conferences all around the country. So um, that was really the main focus of it, and so um, it wound up taking a lot of different branches and avenues. I found myself doing a lot of public relations work, marketing work, organizational communication work, employee engagement work, a lot of different kinds of things. And so after a while, Landis Communications I got a call from somebody who said, I think we ought to team up. And there was another company called Leadership by Design, and I have been basically a two-man operation up until that time. And this was a relatively small consulting firm, about 8 or 10 people. And I was the chief operating officer, and everybody else was really pretty much in a consulting role of one kind or another. And we did a lot of interesting work. But within a year, the CEO of the company got brain cancer and died shortly thereafter. And we didn't really have a strong enough, I guess I'll just call it relationship glue to hold that team together. And so we all kind of dispersed. And then I started my same business I had before, only under Landis and Associates. I said Landis Communications because I was really using a lot more people to affiliate with than I had been before.
Yeah, fascinating. Quite a change from being in the big corporate world with all of those resources to out in your own, right? And kind of setting your
Yeah.
own course.
Yep, absolutely. I'll tell you one thing that I learned in a hurry, that I said it was a two-man operation before I went to work for this company. And and that woman that was with me back then, um, she decided she was going to be a stay-at-home mom for some years. And when I got out of this other operation, we just worked out an arrangement where I could just use her on a freelance basis, on a virtual basis, and that's been 20 years. And I swear to God, I wouldn't know what the hell to do without her. Without a virtual assistant, excuse me, without a virtual assistant, being a one-man operation is not much fun.
Yeah, it's really challenging. We refer to it internally as the chief everything officer,
Yeah,
really.
is that who Terry is for you?
Yeah, exactly. She is pretty much the one man band in our office.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and she does a really nice job of keeping us straight because my partner Terry Lammers, and
Yes, I do.
Terry and I are kind of the big picture guy, and she is the implementer. She
Good.
makes everything happen. So when you were out there, you started in communications, you kind of evolved into a broader consulting. what,
Right.
what was the special sauce for you guys? What made you guys special and different than the other folks that were on
Yeah.
the field?
Yeah, I like special sauce a lot better than unique, because I swear to God, every time somebody says that we're unique, I'm saying, okay, well, let me show you about 5 other people who are doing the same thing you're doing.
Yeah.
A little different, maybe even distinctive.
Yep.
Certainly have their own special sauce, but unique, not so much.
Yep.
So I prefer special sauce or distinctive or something. So thanks for that. Before I jump into that, I think it would be helpful for me to kind of succinctly say, how I position myself,
Excellent.
is to really help organizations improve organizational culture and communication, to boost employee engagement, alignment, and performance. That's sort of the clinical way of saying it. When I get a little more poetic, I like to say that I help organizations build high performance cultures of trust, where people love to work and customers love doing business.
Those are
And
rare birds.
and I'm pretty fixed on that word love, because we spend so much time in our work, more time than we spend with our families, for darn sure. Um, and human beings were meant for more. They were meant to thrive in their work. And in fact, Freud said that the 2 things that are most important for human happiness are love and work.
Mhm.
Well, but not just any kind of work, right? It's work that really is nurturing, really fuels the things that make us feel good as a human being. And so when it really comes down to it, when you think about your employees and your customers, and really think about it in the context of that word love, that's what you need to wrap your head around. One of my colleagues has written a book called Love is Just Damn Good Business. And there's a lot of truth to that. In fact, one of the posters I give to all of my clients, I say that it's a poster, I think it's called Flying Edna or somebody who does that, but it's this real quirky character, and it says absolutely everything you do is a chance to give love. Start anytime you'd like. And so I make sure that that's always there. So that's a description of who I am. Now, your special sauce question.
Yes, sir.
So I think about that in 2 ways. One is sort of what are the things that make me a little distinctive? Not unique, but distinctive. And first of all is what I told you before. I was the head of corporate communications for a major international food company for about 10 years. So the kinds of things that I talk about, kinds of things I help organizations deal with, are things that I actually lived. I haven't been a lifelong consultant out there with my consultant degree and out there telling people what they ought to do, not really understanding what they're going through to deal with that. And then the other thing is that I am the author of numerous articles and professional publications on the topic of communication and engagement. I can't even count how many times I made presentations at conferences around the country, and then the author of the business fable, Getting to the Heart of Employee Engagement. And then the other thing, again, am I the only one who's ever written a book and written articles? Hell no. But, a little bit distinctive. And then also, I have my lean, I'm a certified Lean Six Sigma Green Belt professional with Six Sigma Global Institute. So again, these are things that kind of make me stand out a little bit from the crowd. Now, as for what makes me distinctive about what I do, I like to say that I synthesize three things. I'm sort of a cross between a love doctor, and an organizational engineer, and an occupational therapist. How's that? Now, can you get that picture, Steve?
I can get that picture.
Right. Because success with this kind of work really requires what I call the right mindset about human beings and organizations, the right heart set about human beings and organizations, and then the right systems and processes and tools to put those principles and practices into everyday operation. So it takes all of that in order to avoid getting caught in what I call the program trap, which is just one-off activities that are designed to sort of tweak people, and the Pizza Fridays and the Employee of the Month award, worst thing you can possibly do with a team, and all of these kinds of one-off activities. Now, the right mindset and heart set are kind of based in maybe two main sets of principles. First one is really understanding what I call the ABCs of what employees want. A, they want to achieve. B, they want to belong. C, they want to contribute. And as I said to you at the very beginning, people were meant for more. They should not be defined by their job description. Yeah, is that a responsibility? Sure. But what else can they contribute? Much, much more. And then the other thing, which is really the subtitle of my book, and I'm going to give it to you right now, which is the one thing that I will claim is unique, certainly original. And the subtitle is The Power and Purpose of Imagination and Free Will in the Workplace. So it all came to me kind of when I was thinking about writing this book. And so, so the way I'm going to describe it is by asking you to complete a phrase for me, okay? So, free as a
Bird,
right? Everybody says that, gets that. So what are birds free to do?
free to fly, free to hunt, free to procreate, right? Free to build their nests, free to do a lot of things.
And you missed one that some people come up with, which is free to poop on your car right after you wash it.
Oh yeah. I have a tree out in front of my house, and unfortunately, if you park under it, you will get to meet all of our bird friends.
That's right. So here's the truth, Steve. Birds aren't free to do a doggone thing.
Yeah.
Every single thing they do, from the minute that they start chirping at your window, usually too early in the morning, to when they go build that nest you were talking about, to when they lay eggs and have baby birds and they go get worms and all that kind of stuff. It's all pre-programmed, predetermined. They have absolutely no choice in the matter. None whatsoever. Now, human beings have programs too. mostly for the same reason: comfort, safety, survival. But we alone in the entire animal kingdom have the ability to wake up in the morning to the alarm clock and look at the thing and say, you know what? I know the early bird gets the worm, but doggone it, I'm going back to bed.
Particularly with the snowstorm that we
There
recently
you go.
faced last week, right?
When snowstorms come, it doesn't stop the birds.
That's for true. Yeah.
That's really important to understand, that we alone have the capacity to choose to bypass our animal programs. We can do that anytime we want. Now, the other thing, we alone have the capacity to imagine. It's not our intellect. Sometimes people say the difference is, we're far more intelligent than animals. I'm not sure that's true. But we do have one unique capability, and that is the ability to imagine, which I define as the capacity to conceive of things that do not exist in the natural world. To be able to look at nothing and say, let's build a cathedral and worship God. To say, look at that moon up there. Why don't we go up there and then use our tools of free will to be able to choose to do things that make things to fly to the moon and the stars and elsewhere. So here's the cool thing. And this is what I came across literally when I was writing my book. It was like, hit me like a thunderbolt, that the two things are intrinsically linked. That imagination without free will has no power, and free will without imagination has no purpose. Now you nod at that and you think, well, that's kind of cool. So what? Especially when you're talking about people in the workplace. Well, here's two big so whats. First of all, to the extent that we keep people trapped in their animal programs, confined and constrained by the things we say you got to do, and don't you ever vary from this, we keep them trapped in their animal programs and they cannot excel by definition. You cannot go above and beyond if all you're doing is following your freaking animal program. So where does innovation fit in, right? Second thing is, adult human beings hate to be told what to do. Adult human beings, hell, even teenagers, right? Even 2-year-olds, they don't like to be controlled. And they certainly they want to make sure that they have some control over what happens to them in their lives. And in a lot of organizations, the only control they've had is to stay and do what the boss tells you, or leave and get a job somewhere else. Somebody else can tell you what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So what I do with my systems, processes, and tools as a love doctor and as an organizational engineer and as a occupational therapist is design systems and design all of this stuff in a way that really enables people to get out of those animal traps. So
yeah, really cool, really special as well. And I think Les, as I was listening to you talk, one thing I would also say is you're incredibly modest, because when I was doing some research about you, you are incredibly well written. You've been interviewed far and wide. There is a tremendous amount of your work available out there, and people have shared it immensely. So I was interested to have you segue into that free will and imagination, because I happened to watch a keynote speech that you delivered regarding that, and I just thought that was absolutely brilliant. So it's quite an insight.
Well, and the thing that I really want people to grasp and to embrace is that is not just a novel insight. If you really internalize it and fully grasp the significance of it, you will never again keep people trapped in their animal programs. You just won't. Now, here's the thing. Real important to keep this in mind. Our animal programs are actually the things we're going to default to almost all the time. Mm-hmm. That's what we're going to do because it's easier, it's routine, it's procedural. If we had to rethink everything we had to do every morning, every day, oh, you have to fit, well, how am I going to brush my teeth today? Or how am I going to take a shower? I'm going to eat my toast or whatever. And so you really have to come up with new systems and processes to help reshape thinking. I actually have a quote here I want to read to you. It's from Buckminster Fuller, who was the great philosopher engineer of the 20th century. Oh, yeah. And he said, if you want to teach people a new way of thinking, don't bother to try and teach them. Instead, give them a new tool, the use of which will lead to new ways of thinking and doing. And so that's what I'm doing with these systems and processes. What I'm trying to do is to help people get focused on what I call systematic continuous improvement. With a big S, because we do continuous improvement sort of sporadically and spontaneously, but systematically is not something we do very well. And you've heard of the book Good to Great by Jim Collins, right? Who hasn't? And do you remember his classic phrase in there?
Well, he's got a lot of them. To which one do you refer?
Good is the enemy of great.
Good is the enemy of great, right? Yeah.
Now, let me tell you what I say. Great is the enemy of better. Yeah. Because today's great is tomorrow's everyday standard. And there is no such thing as what I call the Cinderella myth for long-term winners. Happily ever after ain't gonna happen, especially today. So you've got to have systematic continuous improvement. Yep. And here's why it has to be systematic, because we will default to our animal programs unless we have systems and processes. See, we're caught in our habits. What you need is a habit to break the habit of doing things over and over again the same way. If you don't have the habit to break the habit, you will continue doing your old habits because we're so given to the processes and the habits that drive our everyday behavior. So regular huddles, weekly huddles that have 3 specific things that you do with every team all the time. Everybody bringing small ideas, big ideas, everybody involved in, okay, at least once a year, we're all going to sit down. We're going to look at every single process, not one time, spread out throughout the year. We take every single process, strip it down. How can we make it better? How can we make it more efficient? See, the problem is managers believe that all you got to do is have an open door policy or tell people, hey, we love your ideas. Well, what are they going to do? They got work to do.
Right. And now they don't even
go to the office to make it to work. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
I said, and now they don't even go to the office anymore. So you can keep the door open all you want, but they're not.
Absolutely. That's right. Yeah. So I've got, in fact, I've got like a dozen different systems, processes, and tools. Systems, processes, and tools that I bring into the organizations that I work with. And certainly one is having the right kinds of improvement huddles. A lot of people have huddles. They're mostly for catch up. How are we doing on this job? What's the status of this thing? So on. They're not about improvements,
So when you think about, all the things that you've had the honor to work on over the many years that you've run your business,
yeah,
is there one thing that pops up that you would be most proud of?
I would say certainly completing that book, because truth be told, if I'd had to choose my career over again, I'd probably be a Hollywood screenwriter. I love movies. And I love well-written movies. I mean, I listen for the words and the dynamics, and the movies are, just really the thing that gets me. So writing that book, and you know what? Coming up with that original thought about the connection between imagination and free will, something that really has stayed with me and had an impact on me, and frankly a lot of other people. And I remember when I was trying to get this book published by Josie Bass, which was a great big business publishing firm, and the woman that I was talking with, one of their editors, said, this is a great book, I love it. And she said, I want you to know that I have a philosophy degree from Yale, and I have never seen that principle, that philosophical principle, ever stated before by anybody. And she said, it's profound and significant. And she said, and we can't publish your book. I said, what? Says, oh, the only books that they'll let me publish anymore is you either have to be a superstar. I could get somebody who couldn't write worth a darn, as long as everybody knows who they are, or somebody's a proven author and established and all this kind of stuff, which is why I wound up going to iUniverse. But in any event, so those are so truly that's significant. I also am very proud of the work I did at PET as head of corporate communications, and a lot of the work that I've done with some of my clients. So I can't say that there's any single thing that stood out, other than those things kind of all lumped up in one package.
Boy, you've got quite a list of clients too. I mean, I was amazed to look at some of the testimonials and the list of engagements that you've had over the years on your site. That's quite impressive.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Excellent. What were some of the big challenges for you, particularly as you're running your business and engaging in your business? What did you see as some of your challenges, even potentially failures that you've experienced over the years?
Yeah. So the early challenge was probably pretty obvious. It's the same thing every entrepreneur faces, right? I did not leave PET with a treasure trove of clients just waiting there for me.
Yeah.
I remember how much money I made the first year, Steve. $14,000.
Yeah. It's a humbling experience, isn't it?
It is a very humbling experience. And I have to tell you, there were more than a few times in the early, first couple years, 3 years maybe, that I almost gave in, especially since I was actually getting a number of very attractive job offers after I left PET.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you right now, my wife wished I had taken some of those job offers, but yeah, that was the tough part. And then, but every time that I was just about ready to go do some interviewing for a job, some big thing would come through, and it would carry me through to the next thing, and then to the next thing, and the next thing, and you know what that's like. So I'd say that was the tough part about, I'll just call it the challenging part about the early years.
Yep.
And I think in the middle years, I would say that it was balance. Very, very hard.
What do you mean by balance? You mean like work-life balance?
That was one aspect of it. Yeah. How do I make sure that I'm doing everything that I can to make money for my family, mm-hmm. and to be able to provide for my family, and then at the same time really be a good husband and father and be home to do what husbands and fathers do. And frankly, if there's one thing that I could go back and do over again, that would be it. Because it just, reflecting back and seeing the kind of stress that it caused in our family relationships, it just was not good. And then just looking at it strictly from a business standpoint, the balance was balancing the time that you spend on doing the business versus growing the business.
Yeah.
Man, let me tell you, that that push me, pull you kind of tug all the time is exhausting. And probably would have done that differently as well. Anyway, those are the main things that jump out at me.
Yeah, it's funny when we look back, that is the big thing. When you're in it in the moment, right? You think the most important thing is I got to take care of this thing, whatever this thing is in your business, to the detriment of the rest of your life that's around you.
Yeah. Yeah. And, a lot of it is just plain fear, because if you don't do something and shake stuff out of the trees and keep those clients happy, and you don't have anybody who's giving you a paycheck.
That's for sure. It's all you carry it around on your shoulders, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. It was that, you made a key decision. You were quite well regarded in your corporate life. You made a key decision to go out on your own, and then you had many opportunities to go back to where you were before.
Right.
But the decision you made was to stay on your own. What drove you in that regard?
I was meant for more.
Yeah.
That phrase stayed with me for a long time. I wanted to blaze a trail and do some things that I was afraid would be somewhat constrained if I went back to the corporate world or stayed in the corporate world.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to test my wings, like the little bird flying out of the nest. But in this case, it was my choice, right?
Right.
And I imagined what the possibilities would be.
It's fascinating. I saw on your website there was a piece on there about employee engagement, and there was a link to a study that it talked about basically the low level of employee engagement, if you will, and I think for folks like you and I that have been around for a while, I think that's relatively constant, right? And it's that old phrase that Emerson talked about, walking around with being quietly desperate on the inside. And you broke free of that mold. You went out and reached for the stars because you were meant for more, right? And
yeah. And you know what? Really, everybody. Here's the thing, Steve. This is really important because everybody feels that way.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody. I mean, they want to achieve, belong, contribute because they were meant for more.
Right.
And if we design our organizations right, they can realize those aspirations right within the organization. We have to,
regardless of what their job is, right?
Regardless of what their job is. I mean, I even have a list. This is kind of funny. I just happen to have that out here. We tell employees, well, open door policy, take initiative, do it, go on and so forth. Let me tell you what they say. No one really cares about my ideas and opinions. I might get in trouble. It's too hard. It wouldn't make much difference. I'm too busy with my work. It's not my job. They just want to cut jobs. I'm not sure what to do. These are all the things that are going on in people's heads when they hear this stuff about open door policy, because you have to redesign the systems and the processes and the tools to really enable people to do that. Not enable them, but to actually make it part of the work they do. I have a couple of one client in particular, I loved what he said. We decided we're in the continuous improvement business. We just happen to do this other thing.
Mm-hmm.
But we're in the continuous improvement business. And everybody is a part of that. And we're going to make it a systematized approach to doing that. And see, here's the thing. I always get a kick out of people who say, how do I motivate my people? And first of all, I say, well, unless you've taken in slaves or God has taken you in as a partner, they are not your people. They're independent, competent adult human beings who can do a heck of a lot more than you're giving them an opportunity to do. Secondly, it really doesn't work. There's this thing called self-motivation. What you got to do is remove the causes for those thoughts and feelings that I just got done describing. And people are going to astonish you, and put in the systems and processes that make it part of their routine work to engage in improvement. And you will be astonished at what people will do and can do.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it's so rare to see that. It is amazing when you do see it. I mean, I think about Elon Musk all the time. I mean, you talk about using that imagination and then the freedom to just go out and innovate and make it happen.
Right.
He's built 3 organizations now that are doing exactly that.
Yeah. There's one other thought I want to share with you, because this is another great book. It's called Better Than Before by Gretchen Rubin.
Okay.
And in it, she has a phrase that needs to be said over and over again, everywhere it can possibly be heard. And it goes to the heart of what I was talking about with habits. She says, habits are good servants, but terrible masters.
Mm.
Now think about that. Habits are good servants, but terrible masters.
Mm-hmm.
We have to have our habits and routines. Like I said, you cannot be reinventing every minute of every day. You go nuts.
Yep.
But when those habits and processes become your master, instead of you becoming the master of the habits and processes, you're stuck, man. You're going to be stuck in good or less than good forever. You will never get to the point that I said before. Great is the enemy of better.
Yeah, it's the old cliche: if you keep doing what you've always done, you're always going to get what you've already got, right?
Yeah.
When you think about kind of the arc of your business, you had shared with us when you started, some of your challenges and successes, and then kind of in the middle of your business. Right. In the current environment, the current business environment is in many ways quite different, and in many ways very much the same as it always has been. What do you see as the current challenges and the current opportunities in the marketplace today for you guys, as in particular?
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure that my situation is typical. I mean, I'm at I'll call it beyond the peak of my career. I don't do nearly as much business as I used to, intentionally. And I don't have kids in college anymore. And so I can kind of go a little bit more at my own pace. And what I have done, actually, it's a little bit ironic that most of my business these days, I'm kind of a virtual communication director for organizations.
Okay.
Which I really love doing, because that's my bread and butter. And we bring in engagement stuff as well. And as I'm looking at what I really want to evolve more toward, because I'm never going to retire. I mean, that's surest way to die, right?
Yeah, that's I've heard somebody say that's you're kind of a signal into God that it's time to put the pieces back in the box, right?
That's right, exactly.
Right.
So I can't imagine them ever going to quote unquote fully retire. But deep in the heart of me, I think I'm a teacher as much as anything. Mm-hmm. And so I'm really thinking about just trying to find a variety of different online ways that I can teach courses or teach, I'll call them sort of a little more than a workshop, but a little less than a full-blown engagement. But in fact, I'm starting something right now called Accelerated Corporate Evolution. And it's a 2-month program that I'm going to be offering virtually online to work with clients on how to embed two of the continuous improvement processes that are kind of the pillars of the work that I do. One is the huddles. How do you have really a good continuous improvement huddle?
Mm-hmm.
And then secondly is a really effective streamlined method for doing business process management with that. In fact, I call it the DEMI model, DEMI. I like to joke, it's not Demi Moore, it's not Demi Lovato, but if that'll help you remember it, then that's it. It's document, execute, monitor, maintain, and improve.
Excellent.
So I work with groups over a 2-month period to do that virtually online.
Sounds wonderful. How do people learn more about that if they're interested in learning more about that program?
They can go on the website. It actually starts with a free webinar.
Okay.
And then after they see the webinar, excuse me, they can book a call with me to talk about the 2-month program.
Wow, wonderful.
And then I can send you a link to that webinar.
Excellent.
Or to the registration page. I guess actually it starts, I don't know, I got somebody else doing this for me, Steve. But it starts with a registration page.
Yeah.
Sign up there. You set up a time to see the webinar. You see the webinar, then you set up a time to talk. So I'll send you the link for all that.
So here you are 20 plus years in the business and continuing to innovate. Got even a whole new way of delivering wisdom that you bring to the table.
Yep, absolutely.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, listen, I'm gonna throw you a curveball. I got to ask you one other question that
sure.
that I heard from you that totally fascinates me. You love movies and you love well-written movies, right?
Yeah.
What's your favorite, and which of kind of the current flock of movies do you feel kind of fits within that whole well-written mode?
All right. So I keep a list here.
I'm not surprised at all.
But I can tell you, boy, I'll tell you, this is really hard. I'm just going to have to talk about a few of them. Okay.
Okay.
So
please do.
Just enjoy the time. We've got just a few more minutes before I have to go. But what I think is probably my favorite movie of all time is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. The arc of that movie to the tragic ending that gets relieved by this crescendo that I'm not going to tell you about is absolutely magnificent.
Yeah.
Another one that I don't think got nearly, it did get best movie of the year, but I don't think got nearly the attention it deserved, was Shakespeare in Love.
Yeah.
Which starred Gwyneth Paltrow, Judi Dench, Ralph Fiennes' brother, whose name I can never remember. Just brilliant. And then of course there are classics that a lot of people like: The Shawshank Redemption, Braveheart, Gladiator. You know, life is beautiful. Life is beautiful. It's kind of a sad, funny, tragic story.
Unbelievable movie.
Oh my God. Certainly To Kill a Mockingbird, if you're looking for classics.
Yep.
Good Will Hunting, one of my favorites.
That Robin Williams had so much personality in, didn't he?
My God, unbelievable. Something's Got to Give. Oh, Midnight in Paris. I love Woody Allen. That's one of his best of all. Have you seen that one? Yep. Just wonderful. A more recent one, The 100-Foot Journey.
Okay, I haven't seen that.
Oh yeah, you will love that movie.
100-Foot Journey.
Okay. The 100-Foot Journey. Let's see. Oh, Crazy Heart. Did you see that one?
Crazy Heart?
Crazy Heart. It's with can't believe I can't remember his name. Bridges.
Jeff Bridges?
Jeff Bridges. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Incredible. He won the best actor award for that movie.
Okay.
Just magnificent. So there's a few of them. You know what? Another one is just sweet and fun, and it's based on a true story. It's called October Sky. Have you seen that?
No, but I've heard about that one. Yeah.
Got to get that. And then, of course, my favorite musical of all time, and I'll let you go with this one, Singing in the Rain.
Yeah.
Absolutely wonderful movie. I think the best, probably the best musical ever. Well, West Side Story has got to be up there pretty
Yeah, I
close.
was going to say that was pretty popular too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, this has been incredible. This has been incredible. We're going to have, we've got a slide that will pop up here that'll have all of your contact information on it so people can reach out to you. But
Okay.
Les, it's been an honor to have this conversation with you. You do phenomenal work out there. We'll link to your book. Fascinating
Great.
read. This whole concept of free will and imagination and how you can really honor that in people
Yeah.
and set your organization free is
I love the word you just used. I love the word you just used, to honor that. You got to honor it and love it.
Yeah.
If you put that deep inside of you, you can't help but do the right thing with people and get the most that people are capable and willing to contribute.
Yeah. And we got to let them play, right? We got to let them fail every now and then, skin their knees, and
Oh my God. I got to give you one more thing. You treat mistakes and failures as treasures. And there's some organization, I can't remember what it is, but they literally have a quarterly fail fest where they get a trophy for the best failure of the quarter.
I love it.
Where they failed the worst and learned the most. They get a trophy for it. A traveling trophy.
I think that's awesome. This is not my idea, but I heard somebody say, and I think it was somebody from Silicon Valley that said, the United States is the only place in the world where failure is celebrated. And that's what makes us unique and different and better than any other place on earth, where people are, risking their whole lives to get here.
Yeah.
And I think that captures it very, very well.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Steve. I really appreciate it. And by the way, I just love the way you're running E4E. You're doing a superb job. I hope it's working out for you too.
Yeah, thanks. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy it. I think, it's a community of givers, and it's, what enriches my life is to hang around with people like that and see the amazing things that they do. So thank you very much for your continued participation in that group, and then for playing with us today. This was awesome. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, good. Me too, Steve. Thanks.
All right, Les, make it a great afternoon, and we'll talk soon. Take care.
All right, see you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the You Don't Know What You Don't Know podcast. We invite you to visit www.youdon'tknowwhatyoudon'tknow.com and sign up to receive updates on upcoming episodes. You can also let us know if you'd like to be a guest or recommend a business owner to be interviewed. Find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube, where you can like, follow, share, and join our efforts. Thanks for listening. We hope you join us again.